This Story Australia is a charity that preserves veteran stories in documentary interviews. These personal documentaries represent the stories of ordinary men and women who through their actions became extraordinary.
My crew called in to see how I was, and they said, "How are you today? Have we got to go out again today to do what we didn't finish yesterday? Are you okay to come with us?" So they come back a little while later and said, "No, you're going to stay in bed here. So we'll have to go and borrow somebody as our rear gunner, and we'll see you tomorrow then." Well, tomorrow never came for them because they went out that night and they crashed into the ocean.
And Tokyo Rose, I don't know if you've heard of her, but Tokyo Rose mentioned us. She said, "The 31st Battalion," she said, "we know what you're doing, and we're going to bomb Townsville off the face of the map, so you're wasting your time."
My most vivid memories are climbing up the side of that troop ship in Sydney Harbour, but we had a respirator, a steel helmet and a water bottle. And we climbed up on a rope ladder on the outside of the Queen Mary with thousands of troops shouting, "You'll be sorry, you'll be sorry." I got to the stage before I got to where I wanted to be. I think I'm almost right, you're almost right.
For us to have that record and to be able to, we all sat around, put it on the big screen and saw it, and it's just precious to us and makes me cry to hear his voice, because I'll never hear his voice again. And we'll treasure that. And it's been wonderful what this story has put together. And
when I joined the Air Force, I wanted to be a night fighter, which we did. And I met another chappie from Sydney, Poss Whitfield, Victor Whitfield, his proper name, but he'd made it so easy because prior to the war, he was in the Boy Scouts.
I used to sit down with Grandad. He was pretty humble. He didn't really talk about the war too much, you know. But there were times when we would sit and talk about some of the things that he did, and he would tell me stories of him, you know, flying through the middle of two pyramids, you know, looking up at the tops of the pyramids and doing a lap around the Sphinx's head and these things on the way back to base to Cairo. I think the video documentary is awesome, and you know, we get to, because I miss Grandad and get to see him again. And I actually watched this story. I watched it for the first time with my class this year for Anzac Day, and it was tough, but it was good to see him and hear his story and hear him talk about, you know, what he went through back then.
Two of us, myself and the other fellow that was also an electrician at the time, we went back to Vietnam in about 1990, I think. And one other mate of ours. And it was a sort of like putting the ghosts at rest type thing. We spent about, I don't know, a week or so over there, toured around a bit. When we went over there, you couldn't unload to your mates because they had their own unloading to do.
These amazing men and women have taken the time late in their lives to share their stories with us. It's hard not to get excited about the different experiences and what each veteran might reveal next.
And then he said he did something very different. He said, "Oh Lord, we will be busy this day. If we forget you, do not thou forget us." We were operating there for 3 days and only 4 ships were not hit, and Shropshire was one of them. So you might consider and think about this, and we'll never know the answer, but perhaps there is such a thing as divine intervention. Perhaps the skipper's prayer saved the day. You never know, do you? We'll never know.
I was in Sydney with a friend of mine, Grant McCormick, I beg your pardon. He was in Vietnam with me, and I went to his place, and there were protests on the streets in Sydney at the time. So we gave the protests a pretty wide berth, and I just kept driving south doctors wanted to go to Tassie. So our reception was very, very bad. It just affects you, you know. You do what? You're a permanent serviceman, you do what the government wants you to do. And the Australian people stabbed you in the back.
We all learn from history, whether it's from last week's bad decisions or from lessons learned 50 years ago. We need to treasure the time that we can spend with our veterans and listen to their experiences to really pull together as a community.
Heroic and courageous, you will see their unique personalities shine through as they talk about their time during conflict, but also their life after war, including struggles with mental health.
And first night in bed with my wife, I had a nightmare. She was as big as you. I picked her up physically and threw her out of bed. And she turned the light on and quietened me down. But that was my life for, took me about 15 years to get over the shock treatment.
You know, the hard work and the effort that this story has put into my granddad and lots of other veterans is phenomenal, and you know, it will, as the world rapidly changes and history gets lost, I think it's important to have these videos and have the ability to look back on them and listen to stories from the people who were there.
So that's my story.